Hey there.
Hey,
Hey everyone.
hey, Stephen, how's it going?
Very good. How are you?
Mm, great, good to see you.
Nice. Where are you today?
Upstate New York.
Right. Right on.
Yeah.
I'm in Oakland area today.
Oh,
So
nice.
nice. Well, great. I think we'll get started here. So thank you for everyone joining for the LinkedIn Live and Unfiltered with Dieter Cartwright today. He's a partner at the Dutch East Design Company and is working on a really interesting, or wrapping up a really interesting project um, for a hotel in New Haven, Connecticut. And myself, I'm Stephen Chan, partner of ILC, as well as a partner in Eagle Point Hotel Partners, focused on real estate investment. And really looking forward to opportunity to understand um, how net zero hotels are being incorporated in design and in creation today. So with that, Dieter, if you can give us your background and how you got involved in the project.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Stephen. Yeah, I'm one of the three partners at Dutch East Design. We're based in New York. We're an interior design and branding agency focusing on hospitality. We were first introduced to the project, Hotel Marcel, through our relationship with Hilton, introduced to the developer, Bruce and Kramer Becker. We took it from there.
Right. And this was prior to the pandemic. Um, just trying to understand how, how the project evolved from the developer who came to you and to Hilton, and how did was net zero always a goal in mind, or did it evolve as part of the project?
I mean, let's answer that bit first. Bruce and Kramer came to us with net zero, LEED Platinum, passive house certification. All of that was on the mission statement from the beginning. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And as a developer, they are particularly focused on that. Absolutely. Um, we kicked the project off just before the pandemic started, but ultimately the entire project was designed and documented and has been built out throughout the pandemic. So it's definitely been interesting, learning a lot about um, that building type, um, creating such a sustainable product, but at the same time navigating some very different conditions with regard to procurement and execution for the project, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
And speaking to net zero, I just want to say it's all of these certifications are not they don't kind of kick in when you open the doors. Net zero is an evaluation 1 year after opening, so these are projected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And how in the design, it's a very interesting building for folks who haven't been to New Haven. It's a concrete structure that was. I'd love to kind of hear the background on it, because I think it was like Armstrong, Pirelli, and their headquarters. If you can give us a sense of what you had to work with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of an icon architecturally. It's a Marcel Breuer building, completed in 1970, originally commissioned as the Armstrong Rubber Company's headquarters and laboratories. Pirelli took that over, and then I can't say when, but at some point it was closed down. IKEA bought the property and the surrounding area, and then built their IKEA showrooms. Unfortunately, demolished a large portion of the building, sort of a low-rise portion, but left the tower, thankfully. So it is a brutalist icon for sure. Many times over voted Connecticut's ugliest building, but if you have a passion for brutalism, you think very differently about it for sure.
And how does that architecture kind of influence your design development, your concepting, how did that shape you? And then also, how did the lead and the passive house system, how did those influence your design work?
Yeah, I mean, the to an adaptive reuse of any building has a number of challenges, because you're converting it, you're fitting one program into the shell of another program, so it already comes with a lot of challenges. Um, then we layer on top of that, if we're not already satisfied with the difficulties of doing that, all these uh, fairly new building systems to meet our sustainability goals. And there are a lot of challenges laid on top of each other for sure. But the architects, the consultants, us, we made it work. Um, just you know, right away. I mean, the building is a structure of precast concrete modules, which are 5 feet wide. So that forces us to have either a less than 10-foot wide guest room, or a 15-foot wide guest room. So it's already has challenges just from being so very rigid in the internal layouts dictated by this beautiful exterior, this exoskeleton. So that kind of set a lot of the parameters. Plus, you have a lot of historical oversight.
Right. Well, because you were doing historic tax credits as part of that.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, it was. There were advocates who worked to get the building nationally listed, which opened the door to more credits. So there's a bit of maneuvering politically, for sure.
Yeah, and my understanding is that in historic tax credits, I worked on a couple in the past, quite a while ago, but you can't really change the exterior too much, right? And then certain aspects of the interior you can change, but you have to kind of respect the heritage of the building.
I mean, it's case by case, building by building. In this instance, absolutely exterior. I mean, 100%. It has a very idiosyncratic appearance because of the void that's halfway through the building. And then there are key features of the interior that we were either to respect or actually reinstate. And that's, and then you're obviously playing a game there, because you don't want to get that wrong, because when that review process is undertaken, you don't want somebody to suddenly tell you tax credits have been taken away. So you have to move forward very carefully. So sometimes it's about restoring or respecting what's there, but in our case, we had to reinstate very specific features that were required of us. One of them was to reinstate an acoustic lay-in tile on the ground floor, which was actually kind of like a 60-year-old technology that we're required to reinstate. And it's certainly more appropriate to an office building, and yet we had to make that work for, hopefully a sort of a magical and social lobby lounge space in a restaurant. So there was definitely some challenges there for sure.
Yeah, I would love to hear kind of what you felt like was particularly unique about the building to you as a design, did you do a more modernist take on it, or was it a bit retro? And it's because you've got this brutalist building, and you've got the energy. I don't know if, to the extent that the energy and kind of sustainability component factor in your choice of materials. I'd love to kind of hear how that evolved.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, actually, because sustainability is within that there's sort of an ethos that can philosophically inform aesthetic choices. So to that respect, you may choose to have a decorative but unadorned approach, if that makes sense, to sort of to use a little less,
Restraint.
some restraint, and not to be unnecessary. Okay, but at the same time, creating a layered and dynamic space. The And we've done some historical adaptive reuse hotel projects, and in every single instance, it has been a combination of drawing inspiration from the building. You know, the building tells you a lot to do. But at the same time, it was very important to us in this project and past adaptive reuse projects in historical contexts, to not try to bring back prior age. That was really important to us. Yeah,
to not bring back.
Absolutely not. We wanted to write a new chapter.
Yeah, is that because, you know, some people say, "Oh, here's our take on this building because it was of this era." You're not trying to bring it back. Like some designs, they bring it back. You're like, no, we don't want to. We want to move it forward.
Absolutely not.
Interesting.
And from a historical point of view, that's often actually the position, is we want to know where the historical features stop and the new features start. But also just from a philosophical point of view, I think it's important that we take stock of our context and then go forth in a contemporary approach. We didn't, you know, did we or did we not ask ourselves, well, what would Breuer do? I couldn't project that onto him, but I would say when he came to the site, was he trying to put in place something of a prior age or era? No. So we hope to be writing a new and respectful chapter. Definitely just starting to see some of the first kind of online backlash from historians, which is interesting. That's great. It's like a design yacht review in a way. And I think we're definitely going to ruffle some feathers for sure. But I don't think it's not out of disrespect. It's just because some people may expect that sort of, just what you were saying, Stephen, that sort of bringing back to a former look. But how can we do that when we're converting a commercial building to a hotel?
Right. It's a challenge, right? It's like you need to make it functional and modern and but also balanced with some of the heritage or history of the building. And so it's like, finding that balance, right? That no, that's a really interesting challenge. Was there any particular aspect that was like just really challenging, like super challenging, that you were like, oh, I'm not sure how we can figure this out? Like, was it the constraint of the building or the way it was constructed or things? I'm just curious like when you go into adaptive reuse, you don't know what you're stepping into until you're already in it, whether it's behind the walls or, you're dealing with something that's 50 years old, right? And as a building.
I think the adaptive reuse aspect of it wasn't the challenging part. But it's how we meet it, I suppose. When it was time to really, immerse ourselves in the building, so much was already stripped away. There were no real sort of structural or condition discoveries.
Oh, okay, good.
There was obviously asbestos abatement. Once that was all done, I don't think there was that much to learn about the building. There's always something.
Okay?
Yeah. I think that the challenges they're just sort of the confluence of all of the small challenges coming together. Yes, the adaptive reuse, the testing of new technologies. Power over Ethernet is not a ubiquitous technology, but it's not uncommon. And that's a full building-wide system that has definitely taken some, tweaks and errors along the way to get that right. So that's I'm saying this because we open on Monday, and I'm just going through a list of things that are just the last few things.
Right.
One of the, I mean, there's also been, I mentioned that grid, that 5-foot grid. There's just no,
Yeah.
A demising wall is centered in between two rooms on the column between the two windows. So that was a challenge, but that gave us an opportunity. I mean, the windows are everything in this building.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful relief, dimensionality, and we honored that by mimicking that exterior sort of structural characteristic on the inside, honoring the historical depths and angles of the returns, the reveals, but cladding the inside with a wood. So we just give it this warm human counterpart to what's on the outside, sort of faceted window return. Then lining that window up with the door to the room, and lining that up with the overhead light fixture, which was a reinstated historical fixture, and again with the floor pattern of the rhythm of the carpet. So we take these challenges and we just turn them into something that the guests can really appreciate by honoring the building.
Right. And it's about 165 rooms, right? And a restaurant, meeting space. Does it have a pool? It has no pool. So it's more of a business-oriented hotel.
Yeah. It is. I mean, obviously, being in New Haven, where Yale is, our competitors are highly collegiate. But I would say Hotel Marcel, while it does service Yale in a very big way, especially as Bruce Becker is an alumni of Yale. Also, a business community as well, for sure. And just families. We've got a lot of connecting double queens. We played around the bunk option for a while. Just covering our bases there.
Right. I'm going to go technical for a second, and I'm really curious about when you say passive building systems. How does that work? Does it is there a traditional HVAC unit that's whether that's 2-pipe system, 4-pipe system? I'm just curious as what does passive mean, and how does that work if you're a guest in a room?
Well, what you're describing there is actually an active system, not a passive system. So that's So
that's active system. I was curious of what does the passive system look like?
In the instance of this project, this building, the passive design is about creating a very good envelope that doesn't take on a lot of heat during the summer.
Yeah.
And is really nicely sealed up through the year. And so what that's doing is basically giving us as good efficiency thermally as possible. That window detail I described became a very complex thing because it had a lot of insulation around that window, and kind of clad in around it, integrate motorized shades at the same time. So a whole lot of energy went into our energy design, went into figuring that out. But overall, the passive design means that all your other sustainable efforts in your energy consumption are improved upon, because ultimately you're using even less energy.
Got it. So your window systems have double pane, your insulation, so your variability of the temperature doesn't swing as much. It can be more adaptable, right? And so you don't have to proactively have to heat as much or cool as much, and that which causes, right? And you think, are you seeing that more in more projects that you're working on for hotels and other buildings where that is, it makes sense economically? I would think it makes sense economically. It's better for the environment, but it's just a lot of thought that has to go into early on you have to jump through a lot more.
It's already there. I mean, there are code. I mean, your R values are laid out in code.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just about lifting it up. But I mean, it's not a new. I mean, it's a sensibility. It's a philosophy that's thousands of years old, really, since we've been putting mud on top of
Yeah.
brick, basically. We just have to raise the bar in that respect.
Right. That's great. And tell me about how the relationship between the developer Bruce, who's alumni and went to Yale, and and the community, Hilton. Like, how does all that interplay? Like, in terms of executing that project, from you're kind of integrating all these inputs, right, from the owner, from the community, from um, you know the building itself expressing what it needs to do. How does that? I'd love to kind of hear about kind of how you take all those different inputs and then kind of work to create a project like this.
Yeah, we're also the branding agency for the project, so that gave us full immersion and opportunity to create as many thoughtful and authentic touch points as possible. The I'm glad you asked about community, because sustainability. We were talking so far about sustainability in the context of just practical, functional sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very important to be culturally sustainable and sustainable from a community point of view, in that we are seeing the good qualities of a community continue. And
Mm-hmm.
you never just want to come into a new market and just drop a spaceship down and say, that's our hotel. The Milton's Tapestry brand is obviously very focused on context and
Mm-hmm.
giving to and drawing from the community, part of the fabric of that. Obviously ownership. Bruce Becker, developer and architect for the project, is deeply enmeshed in the local community, and then hiring in an operational team who are actively at Chesapeake, or they were recently hired. But they're very active in the Northeast, and that operator was chosen quite specifically because they know the market very well. And now that they're starting to meet, been working with the general manager for the past 6 months, starting to meet other team members, working with the chef on menus. Just today, trying to wrap up the designs for the menus and get those on the table on Monday. Seeing that it's drawing a lot of the community into its kind of vortex, but I would like to say in a positive way. One of our brand pillars that we developed is empowerment, and to not make sure that we're not a sort of we don't want to be that preachy green project.
Yeah.
And hopefully guests and locals, anyone who interacts with the building in any way or the brand, will just be given an opportunity to affect positive change on a daily basis. Okay, just by staying in this hotel, just by making that choice, you are actually affecting change.
Right.
And so to empower people to do that rather than sort of kind of preach it, I suppose.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is like one of the first, right, that will be goal of net zero, right? This is not like it's been done.
No.
It doesn't. This is like you're pioneering in that regard.
Yeah. If successful in its review, obviously, for the first net zero hotel in the country, I think the first passive house hotel. There are other LEED Platinum hotels, of course.
Right.
So that's I mean, it's pioneering, and our client is definitely a visionary in that respect. And the mission here is to see that happens more.
Right. No, that is me, and it's like you don't want to be. It's such that you want to make it that is the next evolution of buildings, right? That they are at this level going forward, and it's as an owner investor. I mean, you want something that you're not just doing it for marketing. You're doing it because it's sustainable and there's ROI to it. It's like that. You otherwise you wouldn't have even done it. Like it's an important component of the overall picture. Yeah.
Well, we're not. I mean, it's not news to the industry. Is that there is immediate there's consumer behaviors being tracked.
Yeah.
People are making choices that are more sustainable.
Right.
So it is kind of your sustainability department, also your marketing
Yeah.
department.
It's like when you go to Europe, there seems to be way further ahead of the curve, than in the U.S. And but I think it's slowly making inroads here. It seems.
Yeah. I mean, the passive house certification that is European certification.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now we've got a bit to go, but the more we learn about it, the more accessible it is to do these kinds of projects, for sure.
Great.
We're just kicking off a new adaptive reuse of a historical bank in Tennessee, actually.
Nice.
I don't think they'll have the same sustainability goals, but just by simply reusing an existing building, you just cut out so much energy use and resource wastage, I suppose you could say. Just
right.
from the decision.
It's amazing. I mean, the building in New Haven that you worked on was empty for like 20 years. Is that right? So it's like you're bringing to life something that was just sitting there, and creating another purpose of its use, right? Rather than building, a brand new, all this energy of concrete and materials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, it's funny that building's sitting there for basically a whole generation.
Yeah.
It's been empty. It's almost its only use is as an empty edifice that sits by the I-95 and the
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Well, I think we're up on our half hour very shortly, but I'd love to hear about our June event is coming up, ILC Cultivate, and I think you will be there.
With Bruce Becker, the architect.
Bruce. And as tell us about kind of what you will be doing at ILC, because is it talking about this project specifically or on different aspects of the Cultivate event?
Yeah, Bruce and I are going to do a deep dive on this project. Yeah, he's going to open the door to everyone, open up all the possibilities for doing projects like this.
Yeah.
And hopefully get a barrage of questions from everyone there.
It sounds like a great story, right? He had gone to school there. I'm assuming he went for architecture.
Yeah.
And now he's like, 30 years later, he's working on in a building that he probably has seen hundreds of thousands of times.
Bruce has a very, very deep roots in mid-century modern architecture in the whole region.
Right.
Having grown up in New Canaan, which is where Muscle Boy lives. So it's it's a deeper story, Stephen. So yeah,
I'd love to hear it in June.
Totally look forward to unpacking that. For sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking a half hour for us and walking through the project. Really exciting. Can't wait. So opening Monday.
Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. You know how it goes with those openings.
It's mad dash to the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
No, thank you, Dieter. Have a great weekend.